I'm joined in studio by Sarah. For those of you who don't know Sarah, most of you do, but if you don't know Sarah, Sarah works in marketing department in Prosperous. You're very welcome back again, Sarah. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so maybe just jump in.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay.
Hi, a married couple, both working, one on a relatively high income, one working part-time on a low income. In terms of tax credits, is it worth the partner earning more, holding on to all the tax credits, or is there any difference splitting it between the two? Thank you.
This is a question we get all the time. Like you'd see it on Instagram, we get them all the time, that question coming through time and time again. Isn't it great the way she says, high income, or relatively high? I hope the neighbours don't know my voice. It's a real Irish thing, isn't it? So let me try and explain this as best I can. Traditionally, what used to happen, like I'm talking about years ago, like I'm talking about 20 plus years ago, if two people in a household were working, they used their own tax credits and their allowances and everything else. And if one person was working, they could take all of the other person's allowances, okay? And they meant, and their credits, right? They say, so really it didn't make a difference. At that time, let's say it was kind of 25 grand a year was where you started going into the higher rate of tax. So if you had two people on 25 grand, they paid X amount of tax. But if you had one person in the household on 50 grand and the other person not working, they still paid exactly the same amount of tax as if the two of them had been working. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. And what they did was, I think it would have been around 2002, 2003-ish time. And I'm fairly sure it was, please correct me actually if I'm wrong, but I think it was Charlie McCreevy was the Minister for Finance at the time. And one of the things government wanted to do was they wanted to encourage more people into the workforce. We had a problem where we had full employment. We needed more people in the workforce. So what they said at that stage was, they say, okay, it's not going to be equal anymore. Okay. If you're not using your credits, you can give some of them to your partner, but you can't give them all. So we can get really technical about the numbers, but really simple terms. If both people in a couple are on around 40 grand a year or less, that means they're both paying tax at 20%. Yeah. Okay. Once you go over, it's a little bit more than 40 grand, but once you go over, just keep the numbers round. Once you go over 40 grand, now you're heading into the higher rate of tax. So if you've got a couple and both of them are on 40 grand each a year or less, grand, just doesn't matter really what you do with the tax credits. Okay. But if you've got one on 80 and one on 20, the person on 20 isn't using up all of their allowances and all their credits and can pass some of them, but not all of them, over to the other person. So that's where it starts to become attractive to do it. You don't have to get too caught up on this. If you're already recognised by revenue as being married, you can request a thing called a balancing statement at the end of the year. And what they will look at is they will say, yeah, you paid too much tax, or you didn't pay enough tax. And typically it's actually more likely that you paid too much tax and you're going to get a refund. Okay. I think just to decomplicate all of this, the simple thing is, and remember, we're not tax advisors in Prosperous, right? And I'm not a tax advisor. The simple thing is that the statement that was made to me by a tax planner that I've put out on Instagram lots and lots of times since, and the tax planner said, you'll never be at a disadvantage being jointly assessed. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is this something that, can you just quiz me on it if it doesn't make sense? Was that really clear?
No, so basically it's obviously circumstantial, but it kind of depends what rate of tax you are paying, and you need to just sit down and look at it as a whole. Yeah, and there's a couple of tax calculators out there. If you Google Irish income tax calculator, right, you can put in one person earning, two people earning, one person earns this, one person earns that, and you can put in all the different computations and figure out what's the after-tax amount going to look like. And it's really easy. And I don't want to give anyone a plug unless they want to sponsor us. I don't want to give anyone a plug. I better not say that. Let me correct what I just said. None of these people sponsor us, so I'm not going to give any individual their name, right? Yeah. But you can imagine some of the big consulting firms and the big tax firms, they have the tax calculators up there. And if you Google them, you can rob their IP and just use it for yourself. But the magic number here is 40 grand-ish, right? Okay. Once you go over 40 grand, if one's on more than 40 and one's on less than 40... That's when you can start. You really need to start looking at it. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you got another one for me? I do.
Owen, love the podcast. Only getting into it recently. Quick question. If I'm setting up an account to transfer the 3,000 to my children, does that account have to be in my children's name, or can I just set up an account in my own name And will that satisfy revenue that I've put the 3,000 in every year? Hope that makes sense. Thanks, Owen.
What do you think the answer to this question is, Sarah?
I'd say the answer is that the account would have to be in the children's name.
Yeah.
I'd say this man's probably afraid if he gives it to them too soon, they'll be spending it. So he probably wants to keep it himself.
Possibly.
Keep it safe. Yeah. But I would say that would be.
Yeah. That's fair. The annual gift allowance is a gift you give to somebody in the calendar year.
Okay.
And you have to legally give it to them. They have to become the owners of it in the calendar year. There's no sitting on the 2nd of January and trying to go back into last year. They have to become the legal owners. And the only way you can make them the legal owners is by the money going into an account in their name. Mm-hmm. And it can't be a joint account. It has to be their name. They're the sole beneficial owners of the money. Now, if it's a long-term gift that they're not going to use for 5 years or more, you set up the account as an investment account. You use a no-brainer 60-40 portfolio or whatever you use. If it's a short-term gift and they're going to use it within the next 5 years, you just use a bank account in their name or credit union or on post or whatever it is. Remember, the rules still apply, okay, for them as they do for you. But you're right, Sarah, you've hit on something good here, right? We don't know this person. We don't know their children, so we're casting no aspersions on their child. But if their 3-year-old, and I'm making up I don't know what age they're, if their 3-year-old turns into be an undesirable who the guards know well, when they turn 18, they have absolute access to this money.
Okay.
And it's legally theirs. In fact, even if they don't turn rogue, right? Even if they turn out to be law-abiding citizens and they're lovely and they're great, and at 25 years of age, you tell them about the money. Maybe you just pull the letters come in with their names on it, right? But you see it with the investment house's name written across the top of the envelope, and you pull it every time. And I'm not suggesting that's what you should do, by the way, that you should be hiding your post from your kids, right? But let's say you manage to get to 25 years of age and they don't know anything about it because you set it up for them when they were 2. Mm-hmm. And let's say you hit some financial difficulties as the parent.
Yeah.
There's likely going to be a tax implication for the child to give you your money back.
Okay.
So once the money is gone, it's gone. Mm-hmm. And you have to be aware of that. And you have no control over how they're going to spend it. And once they know about it, they can access it legally and it's up to them.
Yeah.
In certain circumstances, like within a long-term investment, it's going to be very hard for a 14-year-old to rock up and take their money out in the same way they might with the on post or credit union or bank account because those facilities are there. The investment accounts, there are some complications with them in terms of trying to get them out and being recognised when you're under the age of 18. There are some complications. So maybe some protections there under the age of 18.
Yeah.
But it's their money and they can spend it on whatever they want to spend it on.
To get the benefits from revenue, you're giving them the money. It's not yours anymore, basically. So it has to be in their name. And if you're looking for it back, there will be
There's most likely going to be tax implications. And actually, we should have started this with what is the €3,000 gift allowance. So in your lifetime, your kids or you can, if you're the child, you can get €335,000 from your parents combined. It's not 335 from mammy and 335 from daddy, or 335 from mammy and 335 from mammy if that's the setup, or daddy, whatever the setup is. It's €335,000 from your parents.
Okay.
That's what you can get. Once you go above that number, you're paying tax. Okay. And you're paying tax typically at 33%. But separate to that, you can get €3,000 from anybody in the state in any given year without any tax implications. So mammy can give you €3,000 and daddy can give you €3,000.
Yeah.
In fact, you could give me €3,000, Sarah, and there's no tax implications if we do it in the calendar year.
Yeah.
So, and granny can give little Johnny the money and granddad can give it to them and so on and so forth. So, and what we would do there is we would use that €3,000 a year every year and try and build up a pot. Mm-hmm. And you have to be very careful about what you're building that pot for. So for example, with the 335, there's certain expenses that you're allowed. Like you're allowed to raise your child and it doesn't come out of the 335. Yeah. You can put them through college and it doesn't come out of the 335. You can give them a reasonable contribution to their wedding and it doesn't come out of the 335. Okay. Give them a deposit for the house, it's going to come out of the 335. Okay. So lots of our clients would actually be setting these things up with the hope that the kids would use it as a deposit for a house in the future.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
That's generally what the objective is. But again, if the child turns around and says,
I want to go travelling.
And this is my perfect opportunity. Or, you know what, I want to buy a much nicer car to drive to college in.
Yeah.
You can do nothing about it.
It's their money.
I did have a great one recently though. And it was a client and we've used it since and we've reminded new clients that are doing it. They told their kids, the first day you take money out of it is the last day I put money into it.
Oh. That's smart.
It is.
That would scare me anyway.
Would it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep putting money in.
And I think that's a good rule.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for everybody. I think it's a good rule.
Yeah.
That's our 2 for this week.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. So if we have anybody listening that has more questions, suggestions of topics that they'd like to hear, please WhatsApp us on 087 291 0507. Or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, get in touch.
Sarah, is that the very first time you did it without the number being written down in front of you?
It is.
Well
That's
done.
why I had to run out before. I was like memorising.
Well
saying
done.
it in my head.
So what's the number again?
It's 087 291 0507.
I didn't catch it. Thanks, Sarah. And I think you're going to be joining us again soon with the Q&A. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thanks.